Have you recently had a cold, a cough, a flu, a chest infection, COVID, and recovered from that, even if it took some time, but find that your voice has not quite recovered, that your voice has not gone back to normal? And you're aware of that and leave it for a few weeks, but after a while it becomes apparent that the voice has just not recovered. And that's sometimes why people come to a voice therapist. In fact, it's very common that when you take the history, one of the things they'll say is, about 6 months ago or 3 months ago, I had this cough, or I had a cold, or I had a chest infection, and my voice just didn't get back to normal, even though they have recovered from the upper respiratory symptoms, apart from vocally, and they've been to see an ENT who's reassured them that there's nothing wrong with the vocal cords. Sometimes you might get a little bit of residual inflammation left from something like that. A viral infection might leave some inflammation for a while. So you'll notice sometimes the cough lingers for a bit and the mucus lingers for a bit and sometimes the throat clearing. But it's the change with the voice that becomes really frustrating for people. And it is right to go and see a professional about that. Obviously, first an ENT to check that everything's okay with the structure, but secondly, someone who can work with the voice. Sometimes when the voice has changed with an infection or a virus, the voice will go quite deep. You'll notice with the laryngitis sometimes that the voice gets deeper and deeper and then gets to a point where it doesn't work very well at all. And typically after a few days, the voice will start to come back. But when we've pushed our voice sometimes, when the voice has been a bit sick, not very well, it does get into some patterns sometimes that the larynx muscles don't really much enjoy. So when you're pushing your voice through inflamed vocal cords, sometimes the infection will go away or the virus, but the pattern of using the voice when it wasn't very well is what hangs around. So sometimes it's reestablishing just good voicing practices, just good breathing practices, how to not get the voice coming from the throat. And sometimes a kind of a residual creak can stay behind in a voice, something that sounds a bit like this, even if it's intermittent or all the time, a little kind of faint but constant creak to the voice. And in a way, the voice needs to be rehabilitated, exercised back into fitness in a way, a bit like the body does. When we don't do our exercises so much because we feel a bit weak. And sometimes it can be that someone's had a long-term voice issue or infection, so they just haven't voiced for a while, and it needs to be slightly trained back into full action. But sometimes it's just that it gets into this position of falling back, as I call it, into the larynx like this. And this feels actually quite soft and relaxing to the person. It's actually better to use the voice a bit more dynamically than that. It doesn't really work to use it in a very constrained way, at least not for full voicing. There's certain situations where that voice would be okay, but to get a voice to be able to be flexible and get louder and just be able to do more, to last for a day at work, for example, it really needs to be used in a way that isn't limiting it. And that sometimes is just a legacy of not being well and the voice getting a little bit constrained and a little bit held back. And it feels sometimes safer to the person to slightly restrict their voice, but in the long run, it really needs to be rehabilitated back. And it can be a very quick intervention with a professional to do that. If you found the content of this video helpful, please subscribe to the channel and press the like button.